the trail again and again, hiking and hunting and fishing the land. Time is time well spent. We'll take it to the Delta, to the gray white shores. There's so much to see and do. Mississippi outdoors, the great outdoors. Mississippi outdoors, the great outdoors. Mississippi outdoors, the great outdoors. Mississippi outdoors.
Welcome to Mississippi Outdoors. I'm Pamela Weaver.
And I'm Kevin Meacham. Thanks for joining us.
In our first story, we go to Tunica County.
The Outdoors crew is duck hunting at Beaver Dam Lodge.
Let's go.
I doubled on that one. The infamous Dockery Plantation, and just outside of Beaver Dam, which is the Nash Buckingham hunting place with Mike Boyle and his son Lamar. And we have waded in here to a cypress swamp and button willows. Placed all the decoys out, and they're working in here, as you can see, one or two at a time. And the boys are shooting pretty good today, so we haven't let anybody out, so everybody's in a good humor. But this is a classic Delta hunt, and just outside of Tunica, Mississippi. And many places in the Delta are like this, and what you see is what happens so many times in Mississippi, which is the camaraderie of getting out early in the morning in the dark with people who have hunted forever, and watching these animals and these birds work in here. Pretty exciting day for Mississippi. And just the last weekend of the season, unfortunately. And it'll all be over tomorrow, and everybody will be thinking about next year.
Wow. Don't video that.
Choke. We hadn't let any get out today. Here we go. Straight ahead, baby. Take it, Jack. Good shooting, y'all. We're having a family day.
I know, Dad, you going on the first group? Yeah, we're gonna drink some coffee this morning. We may not shoot any ducks, but we're gonna drink some coffee. We're here at Beaver Dam this morning, and I've been doing this 35 years. And Beaver Dam is a famous old place, and we're lucky enough to be able to hunt here, and had a lot of fun over the years. And we're a small operation. It's just my son and I, but we have a lot of fun. We get to hunt together every day, and there's not many people that get to do that. You know, it's a father-son deal and family business, and we have a good time. Meet a lot of good people. Beaver Dam is about 1,500 acres, tip to tip. It's long and narrow. It's just an old oxbow off the Mississippi River. It's all privately owned, but we're lucky enough to have a corner of it down here on the south end. And Nash actually hunted this spot that we're hunting today. It was known as the cloverleaf hole, and there's a story or two that it's written up in. But we just got a big old blind that we decided if we're going to do this every day, we're going to be comfortable doing it. And so we're going to have a little coffee, and we can cook some breakfast in a little while, and then we'll shoot a duck or two, hopefully. And hopefully we'll get something in here, because it's pretty cold this morning. I think it was 10 or 12, something like that. But we're going to have a good time. We'll laugh and joke, and we'll see how it goes. Yeah, we'll get it all in here.
We're glad to be here.
I've heard about you.
We're here today with Mississippi Outdoors. We're up at Tunica at Beaver Dam Lake with Mike and Lamar Boyd hosting us today at historic Beaver Dam Lake. It's January 2nd. Had a pretty good run of really cold weather. Unusual today. We're low digits today. We had to break ice coming in. All of them.
Beautiful. Full choke.
Better than sitting a kid in a rice field, isn't it?
Amen to that.
What was that, Al? A frozen duck call with a biscuit in it. Man. And literally, there's your shot. Shot.
Hit him. Bonus bird.
All right, it's good. We got us some pan cinnamon rolls here.
Kill him.
We're here on day 2 at Beaver Dam, January 3rd on a Wednesday. We came in here, had to break ice again to get to the blind. Last night, Lamar picked up all the decoys, put in an ice eater. Hopefully that'll help a little bit. We've got better open water this morning, a little better looking decoy spread. And we're gonna give it a whirl again here in just a few minutes. It's about shooting time, and we're gonna turn the lights out in the blind in a second and start hunting. Temperature, big difference. Almost a heat wave compared to yesterday. We got out here, it was in the low single digits yesterday. Today it's 25, light wind. Almost feels like you can wear a bathing suit.
juvenile.
Milo. You know, I kept waiting for a shot on them, and they were just raining damn speckle bellies. I was being too gentlemanly on a slow hunt. Good shot, Phil. Good shot. We just finished our second morning of duck hunting here at Beaver Dam, and we had a really slow hunt today. The ducks, I think, were bottled up in the ice. There were virtually no ducks in the air. Shot our first duck at 9:30 and our last one at 11:55. But finally, around 10:30, 10:45, we started seeing a few ducks, and we stayed here on the lake till noon, till quitting time, which is a local custom here on the lake that everyone stops hunting around noon. Look at these ducks.
Our resident ducks are moving, they're walking.
For over 70 years, Mississippi Outdoors magazine has served the readers of the Magnolia State. The magazine contains interesting features such as wildlife photography and soul lunar tables. Subscriptions to the magazine are very inexpensive, and when you subscribe, you'll receive 6 bi-monthly issues containing articles on hunting and fishing in the state, public lakes, state parks, and our wildlife management areas. For more information, call our toll-free number at 1-888-874-5785.
In our next story, we're headed to the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
The Outdoors crew is taking a look at speckled trout spawning at the Gulf Coast Research Lab.
Hey folks, we're here in Bay St. Louis. We're here for the 10th annual CCA Live Catch Speckled Trout Tournament. Mr. Ed Brunall is graciously taking us out this morning. We're going to see if we can catch some fish for the Gulf Coast Research Lab. The purpose of this tournament is they're going to take these fish, take them back, they're going to spawn them, and release the fry back into the bay. So it's a very unique tournament. It's a live catch tournament. We're going to bring the fish in live. Well, we're going to see if we can catch some speckled trout.
I don't have to catch a fish, that made worth coming.
Today's fishing adventure was extremely tough. This is and that's actually a catfish. He's got a freshwater catfish. This is how our day has been for speckled trout tournament. Can't always catch them every time, but we're glad somebody caught a few for research and bring them back into the bay.
Today, this is the Ernie Zimmerman CCA fishing tournament, and what we do is we come out here as USM Gulf Coast Research Lab and DMR, and we collect all the adult broodstock that they catch for us.
We had a good turnout today. We had almost 50 boats fish, I think. We have 38 speckled trout in the holder there for the broodstock, and 28 croakers, 36 speckled trout, 28 croakers.
CCA held a live catch tournament in Bay St. Louis. Some of those broodfish that were collected from that tournament were brought back alive to our facilities They went through a quarantine process that lasted anywhere from a month and a half to maybe 2.5 months. At the end of the quarantine process, we assess the fish, we take a weight, length, we pit tag the fish, we get a genetic sample, and at that time we differentiate sex and we stock them in our tanks.
It's feeding time here at the Gulf Coast Research Lab. What we're going to do here is you can come in and see these trout.
So here we have our prototypical system for what we use here at the USM Gulf Coast Research Lab for the aquaculture. We have our fish tank. We use a variety of sizes of tanks, but these specific tanks for our broodstock are 10 foot wide and 4 feet deep. Sea trout don't require a large amount of depth in order to spawn or to do any of their natural production, so it's about as easy as it gets.
Playing a risky game.
Wait on Big Girl to come by, yeah? Ooh, that was a good one.
Inside the tanks we have lights which are on automated timers to create seasons of the light and dark periods of their natural spawning season. So we will spawn them for 6 months. They'll think it's in the summer phase, and then we'll transition them down to a more dark, less light phase, and also we'll add the temperature control into that using our heater chiller element that can give us the utmost control over the system and what the fish are in.
When they hit the spawning periods, they'll actually spawn naturally in the tanks, and what we do is we just scoop the eggs out of the egg collector. We count them and we put them in our larval rearing tanks, and we raise them up for about 25 days there, and then we can send them to Lyman, which is a DMR site, where we raise them about 25 more days, and then we release them back into the wild where they came from. So all the fish caught at this tournament will actually, all the fish produced from those adult broodstock will actually come back to this area. So these fish spawned last night, and this could be a combination of a bunch of different females, or it could just be one big female that dumped. But we are able to take genetics on these fish if we want to. All the fish in here are identifiable through genetics. This is about a 93% fertilization rate, so all the eggs eventually float to the top. And the way we collect it is when the fish spawn, the eggs, fertilized eggs, float to the top of the water, and then they are skimmed out the side of the tank. And that's how we collect them. And then there's a screen here that drains it as water comes in, so all we end up collecting is just the eggs. So he's just gonna take a fine mesh net and scoop them. They're pretty hardy when they're in the egg stage, so they can handle the collection.
You can actually see him when he gets a net full.
Oh yeah.
And how many do you estimate are in here right now?
I'm probably thinking 1 million.
Wow.
We have 3 sets of tanks, so 2 tanks are spawning for 6 months. Since this is temperature controlled and everything's a closed environment, we're able to produce fish all year round if we wanted to.
Because, I mean, one female can lay, on average, up to 1 million eggs, one female?
Absolutely, because those fish in there are so big. But generally, it's not just one, and you can kind of tell if it's more than one spawning time because some of the eggs will be more developed than others.
I am going through and counting each of the fertilized larvae first, which the fertilized larvae look more like a little fish curled up in the egg, versus the unfertilized egg, which looks more like your fried chicken egg. Might have a little cloudiness to it, could be crystal clear, but the fertilized eggs are now larvae are much easier to identify. And then I will go back and count the unfertilized, so we have a total of our fertilized to unfertilized, and we can get a percentage of our spawn that we can then determine what the quality of the spawn was.
Once the sea trout hatch, we put them in tanks, and we start off with the smallest prey item that we can offer to juvenile or newly hatched sea trout after they consume the yolk cycle. That is the rotifer.
This particular room is the rotifer culture room. Rotifers are a zooplankton. They're microscopic. They're part of the zooplankton that you find in the ocean. They are the first food item that sea trout larvae eat. Each day, We'll harvest down a certain amount of rotifers, we'll put them in an enrichment solution, and then they'll be moved out and fed to sea trout larvae. Sea trout will only eat a live food item, and so you can't start him out on giving him dry food or pellets. He has to have something he can attack and catch and eat. So right now we have 6 tanks in production because we're feeding the first run of sea trout for this year.
These are the dehydrated cysts that come shipped to us, so it kind of looks like little dust particles. But each one of those are a brine shrimp. And another thing is, like, I can show you about the encapsulated Artemia that we have. So it's a totally different product, more of a wet, viscous kind of Artemia product that we have to put in for the hatch.
It's forecasted that in the next few years, the need for protein originating from seafood would decline to an all-time low. We import a large majority of our seafood that we consume in restaurants. There is over a 90% deficit in our trade. Aquaculture is the science that can help farmers grow fish and help reduce that trade deficit that we have when we import seafood instead of growing it ourselves.
These are fertilized eggs that are pretty close to hatching. This is about what they would look like tomorrow of the eggs that we stocked. Their eyes aren't fully developed, so they won't be eating a rotifer for another day or two. These are day 6. You can see their eyes. It's kind of a bad contrast right now, but you can see their stomach. Sometimes you can actually see rotifers in their stomach. So this is them yesterday. You can see the color in their eyes a little bit better.
At the end of the 25-day period, we harvest the fish, we count them one by one, and then we either send them to the Lyman hatchery for our partners, the Department of Marine Resources, to raise them to a larger size for releases, or we release them at the 1-inch size that they come out of our hatchery tanks. Either way, or we try to put as many fish as we can out to help with the restoration process.
All the fish are currently being cultured in roughly 2,000-liter tanks. And so the sea trout are being lowered and bringing the volume down to the very bottom of this tank. And at that point right now where we're close to, I'm going to fill our bin, which we collect all the fish in. So we have oxygen that we supply to the bin, and we also form an upweller. So when the fish go into the barrel, they turn and come up a pipe into the water column so they don't brush up against anything. Once I fill the barrel, I'll shut the water off, and then at that point, when the fish are ready to be released, we will pull a pipe from inside the tank. I will open the valve again, and the fish will swirl down, and the entire tank will be collected into this barrel. And at that point, we'll roll the barrel around to a group of people who are sitting with counters and beakers, and we will count each fish individually, one at a time, so we get an accurate count of the numbers coming out of the tank. And once we finish these final 3 tanks, they'll be taken to the release site, acclimated, and then released into the bay of Bay St. Louis for these particular fish. The haulers will go into 2 different directions, both going to the Bay St. Louis bay. But we're going to go on the east side and the west side with the even number of fish and release both at the mouth of the Jordan River and the mouth of the Wolf River, which both lead into the Bay of St. Louis. At this size, we like to be a little more gentle with them when we release them and lower the water and put them in by hand through buckets. Sometimes when we release larger fish, we simply open once they're acclimated and let them go out the tube into the bay. At this size, we want to be a little more careful and take a little more caution in the way we do it to ensure good survival. It's going to take a good 16 months to a full 2 years for all of these fish, male and female, to reach what would probably be the legal 14-inch size.
We've released up to 1 million sea trout since this program started for Bay St. Louis.
We hope through this process that on top of the restoration program that we have in place, that we will develop aquaculture technology that will help put some people in business to grow their own fish and help with the deficit of seafood, decrease the amount of fish and amount of seafood that we import from other countries, and improve the economy of the state of Mississippi.
Hey, that's all the time we have for this week. Hope you enjoyed the show.
Join us again next time for more exciting adventures. Until then, I'm Pamela Weaver.
And I'm Kevin Meacham. See you outdoors.
Riding through the bayou, headed for the sky blue, back out on the trail again and again. Hiking and hunting and fishing the land, time is time well spent.